All right, thank you very much, Absalam Jibril, there for the background. We have guests with us in the studios as well as joining us from remote locations for today's conversation. Here with us in Abuja, let's welcome the Honorable Minister of State for Education, Chukwuemeka Nwajiuba. Honorable Minister, pleasure to have you again on Good Morning Nigeria.
Good morning. Good morning, Nigerians.
All right. Also here with us in the studios is Judith Giwamo. She's Education Officer at UNICEF and also National Coordinator Education in Emergencies Working Group. Judith, pleasure to have you this morning.
Pleasure to be here. Good morning.
All right. Also here with us in the studios is Comfort Umahi. She's Program and Partnership Coordinator, Plan International Nigeria. That's PLAN International Nigeria.
Good
Welcome
morning.
to Good Morning Nigeria.
Good morning.
And we also have joining us from our Maiduguri studio, Ali Bukar Dogo, Director of School Services, Borno State Universal Basic Education Board. You're welcome to Good Morning Nigeria.
Good morning. It's a pleasure to have you.
Also joining us via Zoom is Group Captain Sadiq Garba Shehu, retired, a security and defense consultant and expert on Safe Schools Declaration. It's a pleasure to have you join us.
Thank you very much and good morning all.
All right, thank you, Group Captain and the others. Group Captain has often been a guest with us whenever we are discussing the Safe Schools Declaration. But let's begin to this conversation with the Honorable Minister of State. Walk us through again the essence of the Safe Schools Declaration and why Nigeria is now hosting another conference on the same initiative.
Well, thank you. The Safe School Declaration actually didn't emanate out of Nigeria. This is global. Argentina, Norway, and a few other countries got together a couple of years, within the last decade and looked at what had been happening everywhere. Most times when there's a conflict anywhere, first things you realize is the agitators take over schools and use them as camps. Schooling is disrupted, all kinds of things then ensue. So they had this Safe School Declaration, and this is the fourth conference. This is not the first. This is but the first being held in this part of the world, I think. So what has happened over the years is that they've sought to provide some set of guidelines for countries around the world. Now there are about 112 countries that are signatories or participants in this declaration. And they've had the idea of working out some sort of guidelines. That look, if there are challenges that are emanating from an intervention that makes schools unsafe, these are things that we should do. These are how we should respond. These are steps you should take, from how to prevent it to how to then continue learning in case it happens. If a school is occupied, what kind of response? If there's armed conflicts around the area, what should happen? And then there are emerging trends. The nature of human beings, by their nature, things are not static. We've now come to peculiar situations like in Nigeria, which were not thought of before, where you now have unknown gunmen in a place like the Southeast, where somebody will tell you not to go to take WAEC. I mean, that's absolute madness. Now, it's the same thing with the way Nigeria has been surrounded at the fringes, as you noticed, with from Boko Haram insurgents up to way 2013, 2014, from Buniyadi to Chibok. And then now we have these new ones that have now moved to the northwest, all the way into Kagara in Niger State, all across Jengebi and so. So these are new, also emerging threats. And we want to also then invite, this is a conference that will then x-ray some of these new trends, what it is that the military has done, the responses that state governments, if you shut down some schools, why those who have remote learning, many of these places do not even have broadband. They don't have any other kind. So what kind of responses is the world looking at? So most of the experts that will gather will examine what it is, because the core objectives of this particular conference will then be to explain what it is that has been done, analyze what needs to be done in response to emergent trends, and then profile ways around that. but also treat the fallouts from those. Because you see, those children that are disengaged from school, and there's sociological and societal issues that arise from that. How will a country like Nigeria or others respond to that? We also would like to examine the justice system. How do governments then bring these people to book? I mean, you've just highlighted that some of the concerns is that bandits and perpetrators have not had their day in court. Some of these, when the military people will speak, they will probably explain to you that depending on the classification of some of these actors, sometimes there's hardly any need for a court, because by the time you're engaging them, you'll be meeting a cadaver instead of meeting somebody to go to court. So that at the point, because when you challenge the authority of state, because that's actually where some of these cases emanate from. Because most people who engage, they're not just the abductors. These abductions happen as a result of some sort of security challenge around the area. Because most times, abductors take these children for ransom in order to generate income for them to procure more arms. So it is futile trying to either satisfy them or pay them ransoms, because you're just going to exacerbate the level of their engagement. Therefore, you may need to engage them as a state. In other words, anybody who challenges the authority of state needs to be liquidated. And that is at the point where you may depart from international engagements that may require you to take people who challenge the state to a state court. I mean, and as anachronistic as that may sound, it's maybe what it is that is recommended. Those kind of things need to be examined. So the hosting is a cornucopia of persons, those in the Foreign Affairs Ministry, those of us who are implementers in the education industry, but the main actors are the Ministry of Defense, and then all the NGOs and all the people who govern or who look into how human beings and governments regulate their affairs. Everybody's involved. And that is why you'll be seeing everybody from different parts of the world. We are going to be hosting it starting today at the ECOWAS Conference Center here in Abuja, Asokoro, and everybody is expected for the next 3 days to distill some sort of way forward from this engagement. The Ministry of Education has worked on this along with our partners, the UNICEF, Plump, all of the partners to continue. They have the working group that has been on this matter will also then distill the specifics of what it is that we need to be responding to and how we engage for.
Indeed, this is the first time it's taking place in Africa
Yes,
and Nigeria. In July, you were in London for the Global Education Summit, and there was a lot of hype on that summit, and $40 billion was raised. So tell me, what is the ripple effect of that Global Education Summit on the State Safe School Declaration?
Terrific. Again, you have to see what we achieved with going. We as usual, the president was magnanimous. He agreed to attend in person and cornered a large, a bit more chunk than we ought to get for us because of his sheer presence. In fact, I was listening this morning when people were asking about the follow-ups to when Kingsley was speaking about follow-ups to investment summits. That's exactly in that narrative, because he will be traveling alongside businessmen and people who should. He opens doors. What presidents do, open doors. They grant the rest of us access, and then we walk in. And that's exactly what happened in London, because him being there enabled us, working with some more elbow room. And because we were able to do that, we attracted the kind of funding we thought we will. And then to distill it into the states that have the most need. Because when I came on this program, I explained that we don't just broadcast the money. We're going to be trying to seep them into the places where we have our biggest gaps. And that's exactly what you're referring to, where we have these security challenges. You've heard already our work with the governors. We've done a security audit. The Governors Forum has been terrific. They've on their own done a security audit where we've now analyzed, and if you listen to Malam El-Rufai, for instance, we've got a scheme where we can then say, what is the longest period of response expected from in case a school at so and so point is attacked, and how the military can react to their place. If it is way beyond our reaction time, we shut down the school, or we make it no longer a boarding house. Because you see, if you have a female boarding school, it's really pretty attractive because, you know, it's the line of least resistance and the one that pays the highest. So, because once you grab girls, everybody is going to respond and we have to pay. So those are our first few. So what we'll do, move them into another school. I'm just coming back from Borno State, or at the border between Borno State and Adamawa State, Uba and Ashkira. And from there, had gone to inspect what we had, Lhasa. Because when the schools, when we shut down Federal Government College, Lhasa, in anticipation of this, we moved the students into Michika. So when I arrived Michika, my project was to actually see who are studying here and who we need to relocate. It's an ongoing exercise. That's why the monies we're getting, or the support we're getting from, we at the Ministry of Education don't really take the money. What we simply do is direct policy as to where these monies should go. The state governments that we need them to be responded to, where we have our greatest challenge is, the country is a big country. And in the last 6 years, you know, Malam Adamu and the team at the Ministry of Education have done a work of analyzing it. When I came in about 2 years ago, and then gave it some charge, because that's the actual push there. And that's why we're making those kind of soffits around the country. Yeah.
All right, thank you very much, Honorable Minister of State. We'll come back to you in the course of the conversation. Let's bring in now Group Captain Sadiq Garba Shehu. Of course, he's an expert on the Safe Schools Declaration. If you're there, yes, right there on the right-hand side of our screen. Tell us, Group Captain Sadiq, how well have we done with regard to the Safe Schools Declaration? I mean, we've had conversations around all of this, but on the eve of this international conference, what kind of messaging are we taking there? On the eve of this, what kind of message? On the eve of this. All right.
We can say Nigeria has done greatly so far. Hope you're hearing me.
Yes, we can hear you, Group Captain Sadiq. Yeah, we just had a glitch there with the reverberation. Yes, we can hear you, Group Captain Sadiq.
Yes. Okay.
Yes, we can hear you, Group Captain Sadiq. Yes. All right, Group Captain Sadiq, Group Captain Sadiq, if you have a TV monitor in front of you, you probably will have to tone down the volume, but we can hear you now. So just, if you heard my question earlier, please continue with your response.
Okay.
Heard my question earlier, please continue.
Yes, thank you very much. Thank you very much. Since the issue of school security became a very big problem for Nigeria,
thank you very much.
We have to say that
school security became a very big problem for Nigeria. Thank you very much. We have to say that
Nigeria has done great in the fact that when this problem started, we can remember it started with the Chibok abduction. Now, after the Chibok abduction, what did we start? We brought the Safe School Initiative, even though we have to admit that was, spearheaded by the former British Prime Minister Gordon Brown with the support of some Nigerian private sector. But after that, again, we saw the involvement of the Safe School Declaration, which we could say now is the current lingo, and have supplanted maybe the Safe School Initiative. When the Safe School Declaration was launched in 2014, it is to the credit of Nigeria that the country was among the first 35 countries that really signed out the Safe School Declaration. Since that signing, there have been subsequent actions at the Federal Executive Council, through the Federal Ministry of Education, through the Ministry of Defense, and even the Ministry of Finance, Budget, and National Planning. Each of these ministries, in one way or the other, have played their role in carrying forward the Safe School Declaration. However, as was pointed by the Honorable Minister, this is an endeavor that involves several ministries, several departments, state governments, local governments, and even local communities and individuals. Each of these, units, they have a role to play. So maybe what I would suggest is that we should see more and more collaboration between these ministries, between different intergovernmental levels of the state, at the local government, and even at individual school levels. Because at the federal government, you have the Ministry of Education. Certainly, it's an education matter. It is also a security matter. So you have Ministry of Defense, you have Ministry of Interior that has civil defense under them, you have Ministry of Police Affairs that has to play a role. It is also an issue of signing conventions or agreements, in which case the Federal Ministry of Foreign Affairs will also be involved. You'll also have matters of financing, because again, like we said, maybe we don't have money dedicated to this actual self-school. So definitely Ministry of Finance will have to do. But like I said, what we need to do, each of these ministries have done their own. But if you ask me honestly, having been involved with this self-school declaration, what we need to do is to bring all these various moving parts together so that we have a concerted action. We select which one is the lead ministry. The lead ministry will be supported by the other ministries. I think when we do that, we'll see more and more fruits of this self-school declaration, which really is a very great project, that Nigeria needs to put more effort on. Now, with the issue of, things that have been done, I am aware that even last week, there is a document, like a training guide for Nigerian security forces on how they could protect schools to ensure that our students are not abducted, our children are not abducted. This was launched, I think, at the Ministry of Defense. And like I said again, this shows you how different ministries are working differently in the background, but we need to bring all these efforts together to ensure that we go. I mean, once we do that, I'm sure of every agency, if every state government does its part, will be sure that the issue of abduction of children, will become a thing of the past. At the state level, definitely you have to involve state governments. You also have to state specifically the SUBEBs, that is the School Basic Education Board, because they are in charge of, basic education. At the local government levels, local governments are in charge of primary school education. So you see, they also have a role to play. At the individual institutional levels, you have PTAs, you have proprietors, association people that have private schools. All this thing will do. Back to the federal government, and specifically since the Honorable Minister of Education is here, I understand that the federal ministry does not control many schools. But under the federal ministry, you have the unity schools. What I think the Ministry of Education should do is to set up model self-school implementation in these few unity schools that are under the federal government. If the federal government will set up model systems of how to secure schools, I am sure this will trickle down to states and eventually to local governments. That is what I have to say. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much, Group Captain Sadiq Garba, for your opening comment. Let me join Ali Bukar Dogo. He's the Director of School Services, Universal Basic Education in Maiduguri. Knowing fully well that Borno State is one of the worst hit educationally because of the Boko Haram insurgency. And with the Safe School Declaration, how impactful has it been for you?
Well, viewers, good morning. Actually, most people are confused with the definition of safe school declaration. They have to understand the definition of that terms. So I will go straight to the definition. The Safe Schools Declarations is a joint statement which provides framework and then supported by the government to ensure security and safety of the school. It is also provides mental health. Mental health in the sense for our children, which means most of our children are traumatized. They have phobia or fear of going to school because of kidnapping and Boko Haram attack and so on. So it's a process of providing mental health to our children to ensure access to school and enroll our children and also retain in the schools. And that's the main purpose of this Safe School Declaration. Actually, we started this program, the Safe School Initiative, with Gordon Brown visited Borno State, where we took him to a school where the Boko Haram was completely destroyed. That is Kulogumna Primary School, which has been already reconstructed. And really, they had a lot of interviews, which I was one of the one that represented SUPEP at that time. And I gave them a lot of ideas on how we'll come up with these ideas. But our government is doing a lot in the areas of safe school declaration. All our schools are first. That is where they started. They reconstructed all our schools. In addition, they built over 70 mega schools, which are university standard in our other states, when you look at it. So Professor Babagana Ubarazilim has done wonderfully well in terms of all other aspects of development, in terms of education, health, water resources, and so on. So in fact, he has done a lot to ensure that he provides safety and security and then conducive teaching and learning environment to our pupils and teachers. In addition, this, the schools were provided with security gadgets, metal detectors, and they also deployed security personnel to our respective schools. And today they are the one manning most of the schools. And with this idea of safe school declaration, I believe it will have a framework that will develop to ensure school safety and security in our state. Because the government has the zeal, with the support of our executive chairman, who is off and doing, and actually they are doing a lot to ensure that they provided conducive teaching and learning environment to our children and provide all necessary facilities on ground to ensure that the children come to school, stay, and learn.
I'm still going to stay with you briefly. The Safe School initiative started during the previous administration of Kashmir Shatima, and there was a lot of hype then. They even went to schools in Goza, in Biu, in northern Borno to ensure that, bringing the schools back on track after losing so much time out of school. What I want you to tell me is, how impactful has this Safe School Declaration been in Borno? Are there any changes in implementation or?
There is a lot of changes. Enrollment has increased, and retention of especially girl child has also increased, because formerly there was a phobia or fear of going to school because of insurgents attacks and so on. But now, with the provision of all these necessary security gadgets and the other personnel, security personnel, it has improved on our enrollment, it has improved on our retentions, and then it has also improved on our transition to the next level.
All right, thank you very much, Ale Bukadogo. We'll come back to you in the course of the conversation. Now back to the Abuja studios. Ms. Judith Giwamo, from the perspective of the working group on education in emergencies, what is your reading of our current situation vis-a-vis the Safe School Declaration?
Okay. From the perspective of Education in Emergencies Working Group, we look at education as the right of every child. So if a child is a female child, if it's a child with disability, the child has the right to education in a safe and protective learning environment. Following the approval for the ratification of Safe School Declaration by the President, this was in 2019, the first ratification instrument that was developed by the working group led by Federal Ministry of Education was a National Safety, Security and Violence-Free School Policy. This policy earmarks the key steps to be taken in terms of for preparedness. Preparedness is talking about measures that need to be taken in advance. So it could also to totally prevent or to mitigate so that the impact will not be much in terms of vulnerability, in terms of risk. Now, the policy also looks at response. So if it has happened, what are the key measures that need to be brought to book, including looking at trauma to ensure that the child can re-engage with the education system. Now, this policy is available and has been approved in August by the National Council on Education, so it's ready to go. Also, there's a minimum standard for safe school declaration. This is a document that talks about what are the minimum standards allowed, attainable for a school to be safe. I want to say that key within the policy is looking at, like the Honorable Commissioner mentioned, looking at risk assessment. What are the risks that are within that immediate environment? And I want to say that we've been talking about school safety and security as a whole society approach. It's multi-sectoral. Yes, most of it, we are talking of security, but have we stopped to consider the value of the community? The community are one of the most strategic partners because they're in the vicinity of the school. Before the security can come from the state, the community is there. How can we, engage the community so that they know that they play their role as duty bearers, key duty bearers? How can they take their responsibility? How can they, ensure that in terms of accountability, they are able to do some basic things? For instance, looking at the local security architecture. Is there anything that they can do in terms of working with the security even at the state level? So like the civil defense, is there something that has been observed from the risk assessment findings that can be built upon? Also, we look at establishment of early warning systems. The community themselves, we were involved in the development of modules for school safety and security. This was held in Sokoto last month. And we were sharing with the school basic SBMCs, the school-based management committees, and they gave some stories of how they observed strangers in the community, and then within a short time something happened. They observed some people, some children hawking things so cheap, and so there are these early warning signs and early warning systems. How can that be linked to a very functional information management system so that they observe something, they report it? Then we are also looking at how can we, based on the risk assessment findings, improve the infrastructure? How can we strengthen? Because yes, you could have one security person on guard. What can he do against 50? Are there some things, some school-based intervention that children, can we prepare them, even evacuation drills? These are very, very critical and simple. You train the children, so we are talking of what we call conflict-sensitive disaster risk reduction plans or school safety plans. These plans are developed and the children are part of it because we believe in participation. They need to know what they need to do in event of an attack or in event of a possibility. Are they trained? How often do they do this evacuation drill to practice? Is there an M&E to say, okay, no, you didn't do this well, this is a short time. So what can we do with the children? Teachers.
Thank you very much. We will elaborate further, okay. I hope, on the points that you have raised. But earlier, when the Honorable Minister of State was speaking, he drew his broad strokes, saying, look, we have this challenge mostly in the Northeast. Now, the challenge has come to the Northwest. And then, of course, we are seeing the Southeast. I mean, a priest was murdered. And then candidates for WAEC were sent out of their classrooms, out of the examination halls. We don't know whether schools are open today. That's why I wanted you to sketch. What are you seeing? Do we have an emergency in our education sector? What is your reading of it? And what are the factors contributing to this before we start getting back into the details of how to respond or how to apprehend through early warning systems?
Okay, so I was talking about preparedness. Preparedness is actually talking about even the removal of what is safe, what is of value from a place of threat. So in a situation whereby maybe a risk assessment has been conducted and it's found out that the reach out time for the security to get to the school before something can happen, and the minister mentioned that such schools will be shut down, actually removing the children from a place, from a threatened location is very critical. We are looking at it from the perspective that, you know, the children, it is very critical to ensure that they are protected. It is very critical to ensure that they are safe. So whatever structures need to be put in place, not just looking at the security architecture, like I said, but what can education do? Are there anything that education can do? Are there anything other sectors can do to support the protection of education from attack, which is basically what the Safe School Declaration is all about?
Okay, Dr. Judith, thank you so much. Let me bring in Dr. Comfort Umahi. She's the Program and Partnership Coordinator at Plan International Nigeria. You've been listening to other guests bring out to the fore their perception of what the Safe School Declaration is all about. Let's talk about the elements, framework, and guidelines for Safe School Declaration in Nigeria.
Okay. One of the guidelines for the implementation of the Safe School Declaration is to monitor and report attacks on education. And we know that one of the gaps we've been having is having a comprehensive data on attacks on education. Some of these attacks that happen in schools are not even reported. We only hear, most of the reports we hear is when maybe 200, 300 children are adopted. But there are other attacks happening in communities that are not even reported, you know. So what the Safe School Declaration is doing is to build the capacity of schools, education personnel, to be able to report and monitor some of these attacks. And so what the Education in Emergency Working Group has done is to support the government to develop monitoring and reporting tools on attack on education. So with these tools, schools are able to take inventory of the facilities they have in their school, including the number of teachers and students or pupils, so that when there's an attack, you know, they also go back to check that data. So that way they are able to track to know the level of damage that has happened and also the kind of support that the school will need. And oftentimes when there's an attack and then schools are closed down, the security personnel come to support, and then they use the school as military base. The Safe School Declaration is also saying that students shouldn't be kept at home. Education should not stop because of conflict. And so when these security forces want to stay in the school, maybe to guide the school and the community for that period, the school also need to know the facilities that are in school before they come in. And even when they are going out of the school, they will also take inventory. They will work with the school, especially the school-based management committee, and the community as a whole, to check if there are damages, who is responsible to fix those damages. And also we are looking at education continuity even during a time of conflict. So schools are shut down. What happens to the children? They sit at home and then learning stops. Safe School Declaration is saying there should be alternative education. Even while the children are out of school, the COVID has also opened our eyes to different alternative educations, reading hubs, radio programs, television programs, and others. So we are also looking at alternative education to ensure that there's education continuity during conflict.
All right, thank you very much, Comfort Umai. I want to go back to Group Captain Sadiq before we return to the Honorable Minister of State for Education. Group Captain Sadiq, still with us via Zoom. Now, we already had the Safe School Declaration being implemented, and yet within mostly a 9-month period, starting from December last year, we saw a series of attacks on schools, and pupils were abducted in their hundreds. Some of them, of course, are still in captivity. I'm saying that even while the Safe School Declaration was being implemented, we were having these attacks. It was like a domino effect. What failed or what happened?
Yes, yours is a very valid observation. School attack is still ongoing, despite the fact that we are supposed to be implementing the school declaration. Now, however, the implementation of the school declaration is, a coat of many colors. In some states, especially in the northeast, where they were the first to feel the brunt of the, abduction of children, beginning with Chibok, Dapchi, and the rest, we saw governments implementing some of the recommendations that are contained in the safe school guidelines. What are those? We saw schools being transferred. We saw schools offering alternative forms of education. This we have seen in states like Borno, Adamawa, in Yobe. However, in other states that do not experience the terrorism of Boko Haram, the truth is that we have seen a slow implementation of this safe school declaration. Like the last speaker said, every level, at every step, beginning even from the Parents Teachers Association, owners of schools, local governments, in the safe school declaration guidelines, there are tasks, there are actions they should take to minimize, beginning with sensitization, beginning with early warning. School is in a community. Even the community has to be vigilant. So the truth is that we have not seen that school declaration implementation percolating down to states, down to local governments, down to private school owners. For example, I would wish to see state governments insisting on school owners that you must have a security policy, you must have a security policy a plan as a condition for renewing or even offering a new registration. I don't think many states are doing that. So you allow every state to do what they do. There has to be a security minimum that will be issued by the government schools, even if they are not government schools. And of course, in government schools, since they are government schools, you implement those things. So I completely agree with you. The implementation has not really percolated downwards. But we hope this event, this international event about safe school declaration, I'm not proud. In all honesty, I'm not proud as to why this event was brought to Nigeria, but we know the reason. Unfortunately, Nigeria is being chalked now as one of the countries with the highest rate of school abduction. So naturally, they bring it here, but that's not a bad thing. If we can draw lessons, if we can learn from other countries, if we can ensure, apart from meeting and seminar and signing papers, that this self-school declaration is populated downwards with federal government, state governments, local governments, school owners, PTAs. When I say PTAs, for example, you have children. Some of us can afford to even pay large sums of money in private schools. What is wrong with going to PTA meeting and asking the headmaster or the principal, Mr. Principal, sir, what plan do you have in case there's any abduction or there's any attack on the school? I want to know before I pay my next school. How many parents do that? This is just to show you that everybody has a role to play, but it's not percolating downwards. Again, I'll permit me to briefly say something what the Honorable Minister of State said about legal or judicial action. We also have to specify what is the punishment for people that whether it is true or not. There was this story of one of the people that did the Ankara abduction coming back to the society and saying that he has repented or anything. That person should be punished. And there is a risk of not taking punishment in Nigeria. Yesterday, I think, I read a report that some people, I think Serap in particular, they have made a report to the International Criminal Court about the need to investigate school abductions in Nigeria. Now, I always tell people, whether it is military, whether it's anything, ICC intervention is a sign that we are not doing what we are supposed to do in our country. ICC is complementary. It will only come in if your judicial system, if your punishment system is proven to be incapable of taking action. So we should not allow ICC to come and tell us what we do about people who abduct our children. We should have legal frameworks specifically for such a crime, just as we're having for rape and other things. Thank you very much.
Garba, let's join the Honorable Minister now. They've talked about national policy to guide the implementation. My question is, what is the level of support by the National Assembly to place a law to support the implementation? Should it be backed by a law?
Thank you. Truly speaking, everybody has spoken to the gamut of what is being discussed. Implementation is always at the root of almost the answer. However, you need to appreciate this is a whole of government exercise. This is security does not exist in a vacuum. As soon as there is this security in one part, and it's not really a result of one government or the other. We're not blaming a past government or a current government. We're not blaming them. We're saying as we've progressed along these lines of insurgents and insecurity along different areas, you've seen a rise in those places. As soon as you have this security challenge, then consequently it takes just a few more weeks or years before you now hear about abductions and threat to schools. It's not just a corollary of the aura, because once they use that, once there's insecurity in the place, the first things you hear, there's fighting and so on and so forth. Now, there's nothing a legislature can put in place. The laws of the country are clear. Everything is already available. There's a military law, there's a police act, there's a reform, everything that the National Assembly needs to do, they've done. We have the laws. And I can tell you, because as a lawyer, I know that all these exist. There's no challenge if we apprehend a criminal today. We won't call him a criminal, because if he's a Nigerian, he's entitled to the justice system. And if for any reason we try to prosecute him and he gets away maybe on a technical ground, or he has his rights and all of that. Even when you think, oh, I caught him with a gun, he was shooting two people, you still need to take him to court. Prove your case beyond reasonable, that. And he has a right to appeal, even that, until he gets to the Supreme Court, if he can afford it. Now, Nigerians assume, when you caught this guy and you didn't shoot him and he died tomorrow and we see that he's dead, then that there's no justice in the country. Okay, now, justice is a very broad thing. And yes, people have reported Nigeria to the ICC, and maybe you can claim that there are no laws in the National Assembly. I can assure you that there are laws for everything. But when somebody is a citizen, or even when he's a combatant, if he's a prisoner of war, there are regulations around even how you treat each person. So I appreciate when people, every citizen may be disappointed that a so-called bandit or a so-called insurgent is being treated as if, in the head of anybody, you will say, this is not how we treat. If somebody has done something and he'll hate, we may, oh yeah, you're entitled to say that. But we're a government. We're not rascals. We're not a bunch of bandits. We're regulated by law. We're governed by law, and that is what we need to operate within. The rules of engagement for the military are also clear. When we've declared a group a terrorist organization, so they can shoot each other, because we know that they are trying to take us out, so we're in a position also to take them out. However, I need for Nigerians to appreciate what everybody has spoken to is about the need for a whole of society approach. From parent, number one, assess threat levels, to the next big, which is the teachers we have, the people we've hired to run the schools. They are first line of defense. If our teachers are properly groomed, which is why all of these guidelines you hear about, what these conferences do, what governments try to articulate, when we articulate all of them into some sort of, we then, disarticulate them to the schools themselves, and it cascades into a system. Now, what is the rate of absorption? How do people buy into that? Well, even when you teach children how to respond, all of them will not react exactly the same way. You can give them a nice scenario of how you should react when you hear gunshots, or how communities behave. People in the communities themselves go to sell fuel to these bandits. It's a complicated mix. Even when people are trying to defend you, the military themselves will tell you that they are threats from even the communities themselves. You have a situation where, in Buniyadi, for instance, we had 4 security men in the place. They lost their lives. As soon as you position mobile policemen in a school, that immediately there's a threat. It invites even consciousness. Sometimes, originally schools in the north where there's a large expanse of land, what were you fencing them for? So incursions, sometimes you see communities moving through or pass them to go to their markets and so on and so, because these were built as a community. Some of them were community centers, even their police stations on the days of election. You know, the construct around schools was to integrate society. It wasn't designed in the response that we're trying to give them now. And that is a problem now. Now we now want to start fencing schools. We found out in Kaduna, for instance, at the forestry school, they actually carved, because the school, maybe they wouldn't have been attacked if they weren't fenced. Because they were fenced, they came from the back and nobody could then see them. They carefully dismantled the wall and then trooped into the school. And the school at that point, the guards were in front at the gate. This is the problem of fencing a school, because then you can't see everything. So for every reaction, you come back to what the problem is. A society that has these many dysfunctional elements, whether they are bandits or whatever you call them, will always be a threat. They will always pose a threat. How the idea behind, and I need to differentiate a little bit between Safe School Declaration and Safe School Initiative, because you see, when Gordon Brown's initiative started in 2013, what they did was put some money together to react to what had happened to children at the time. So they relocated many of the girls, they moved them, and they started paying school. Some of these initiatives have now been absorbed by the Northeast Development Commission. Most of the monies that were provided in Borno State were provided by agencies who brought money together. And you've heard the commissioner, the UBEC, Subeg person from Bauchi, Madugu, had said they had built nearly 70 model schools. Yes, that's true. From the days of the current Senator Kashim Shettima, they started that initiative because the current governor there now used to be the commissioner for rehabilitation. And they did a lot of work trying to set out schools. Many of the schools, they even actually gave us one to move the federal government college in Mongono into one of these model schools. The idea is, yes, build nobody to provide the infrastructure and do all of that. That was what they got the monies for, and they used the money, and the schools are standing. But not all parts of Nigeria have had the same response, because there hasn't been a concerted effort to then go and build schools there. Jenkebi, for instance, just happened this almost this year, and the girls were moved. In Kagara, for instance, in Niger State, this is completely very remote. And the school is so large. In fact, nobody knew in what direction the children had gone. So if communities are reacting, they have a due, like Madam Giwamu had just said, there's this response. If you see something that is untoward, unusual, there's a response mechanism. We're invited, and communities know this. There's community policing, there's community, everything is a whole of government approach.
You know, Honorable Minister, there's something I would like you to speak to, which also has to do with implementation. What are we seeing from the commissioners for education, commissioners for health, commissioners for any other title that may be relevant to the successful implementation of the Safe School Declaration? Are you seeing a trickle down of the guidelines? Are you seeing a trickle down of the framework? Because in the past, we've had to engage some governors, and of course the governors were speaking as chief executives of their state, and what they were going to do. El-Rufai was with us from Kaduna, for instance, and they indicated some of those measures. But are you seeing that kind of reaction? Take a look at the Southeast, for instance, where schools have also now are becoming targets. In the Southwest, we are not seeing that yet. Are there preparatory measures? In the Northwest, which has been the epicenter in recent months, what is it that we are seeing from them? Or are these just knee-jerk reactions?
No, there's a continuity. You see, at the subnational levels, you know, governors lead at subnational levels. But if you look at the program you had earlier this morning, newspaper, you were making some analysis, which is actually correct. From the time a jailbreak occurs to a 3-month period, when you see the effect of that jailbreak, because the day the guy leaves jail or the guy is run away, they're hiding. By the time they regroup to associate with their former AK-47 suppliers and so on and so forth. In a 3-month period, you see a spike in criminality around the area. Whether it was in Benin, like you pointed out, we've had to go to Federal Government Girls College in Benin to shut out build a new wall on the embankment that goes to the area. It's a huge problem around the country because each small thing, this one that you heard, the Oyo State jailbreak today, myself and the Minister of Interior will be discussing, so we know how many, you wanted to also find out in the program, how many people have actually been returned, how many guns were, or even if you shot somebody, you want to know where the gun he got, or where you attacked, those tracing are happening. The security operatives in the country are overworked. Everybody is working because you will think that what happened in Owerri, it does not affect what happens in Port Harcourt. You're joking, because that may be where they moved. So all of this is a whole of government approach, and that's what we're doing. However, when you ask about commissioners and operating, for us, what we do with the NGOs, or what we're going to distill from this declaration of this conference will be guidelines. There will be work. Each of them brings on board. The Education Emergencies working group has been working on taking out these facts. Look at the records of what she's giving you, and then based on this, government will agree to a broad policy to guide everybody. Then we push this back to those who also are implementers at the field, and they begin this response mechanism. And that's the buy-in is there, but people react based on what their immediate challenge is. It's not esoteric. They don't leave it out in the space. When it only begins to be a problem, when people get their own particular challenge, then they react to that. Maybe there might be health issues, for instance. Until you get to the point where children say they don't want to go to school again, you don't recall what you need to do on the trauma that this has evoked, where the fear of school. Until it gets to the point where girls have an issue with menstrual hygiene, you don't even think that that's what's happening at the moment. So you may not have kept sanitary towels waiting for them to react. Until that happens, that's when that triggers. So they respond, they do. But the guidelines are there to govern the regime that sets about how you then respond in those respects. And that's what government does. Prepare, both against it happening, what you do when it happens, and how you respond or clean up she described to you. That's why I said the nitty-gritty of the policy documents. What we do at the level where we're operating is get policy. We aggregate them from all the people who have worked for us and then disseminate them into the system. So I think they are doing so. I don't think the subnationals, you've heard from both the security expert and an actor in the field, what they are doing at their different levels. So I know that all the people we are working with, it's not enough. I'm not saying it's enough, but that's why this is continuing. And life itself is a continuum, because there will be new sociological circumstances that provoke different. There are some threats that might become cyber tomorrow, the ones we've not even heard of right now. There are things that are new, upcoming, and that we've not experienced them. But we need to stay focused, stay ahead of the game, not a knee-jerk reaction or that. Prepare guidelines, set out modules, everything, and keep working, because we know that life happens, and therefore we must happen to life.
Indeed, Honorable Minister, policies, guidelines, and implementation. We'll get to talk about that when we come back after this break. Don't go away.
The Ministry of Works and Housing has the responsibility to help improve the quality and the quantity of the road infrastructure asset, which are the roads and the bridges and the highways. At the moment, we have over 13,000 kilometers of road network under repair, reconstruction, or rehabilitation out of the existing 35,000 kilometers of federal road network. These 13,000 kilometers are comprising about 850 different contracts which the ministry superintends across Nigeria. We are fulfilling the mandate of our ministry to expand the connectivity of Nigeria's states and by extension the towns and villages through road transport.
Finally, the hero of Nigeria Nigeria's democracy has arrived. He shall usher us into a new phase of development, peace, and prosperity. He is the father of the new Nigeria, His Excellency President Muhammadu Buhari, GCFR. Welcome to another season of giving Nigerians hope yet again. We are sure of a great future for both ourselves and generations yet unborn. We look forward to your leading us as a nation into our manifest destiny. Though the challenges against us as a people are many, we know that your leadership shall set us on the right path to our greatness. A new dawn beckons on us all, and having you as our president is a precursor to this. Thank you for believing in Nigeria. This message is from the Nigerian Television Authority, NTA.
Dear compatriots, our country can be as great as we want.
Let us all commit ourselves to its greatness.
We must be willing to set aside our differences, unite and stay as one.
In our expansive landmass, human and material resources, and plurality lies our strength.
Let our challenges lead us to rediscover our common ground, and together, let's find solutions.
This will take some time, so it requires patience, tolerance, and forgiveness from every one of us.
Let all hands come on deck to protect and transform our country.
Let us unite and see each other not as adversaries, but as brothers and sisters.
Together, we can build a better Nigeria for ourselves and for the next generations.
This message is brought to you by the National Orientation Agency, NOA, with support from Nigerian Television Authority, NTA.
All right, we are welcome back, and it's still Good Morning Nigeria, and we're live on the network service of the Nigerian Television Authority. We still have all our 5 guests, one via Zoom, another from Maiduguri, and 3 of them with us here at the Abuja studios. Let's come back to the working group on education in emergencies. Judith Giwamo. We do know about the policies and framework, and part of the theme for the conference, which is kicking off today in Abuja, is from commitment, to practice. What should be the expectation of observers of the conference? And for us as participants, what should we also expect to take to the conversation?
Okay, as we speak, we have over 1,000 participants that have registered for this conference. And so it's a hybrid conference. It's going to be physical and also virtual. The idea is that different countries will come and share their best practices. Now, from those best practices, what can we learn? What can we take on? What can we translate for you? So that, for me, what is most important is post-conference. Okay, conference will come. We've created a lot of awareness, what has been done. Taking it further, after the conference, what next? There is today the first activity we have is a CSO event. CSOs are supposed to be like watchdogs. So CSOs from all around the world are going to meet today for 2 hours from 3 p.m. to 5 p.m. discussing the same issues. What are the issues? And putting together a statement to the government. This and this and this are what we needs to be in place. We have not seen this in place. We need this to be in place. Also, children will be talking. So the idea is that after this conference, that is when the work starts. It has to be in a situation whereby what has been aggregated during this meeting is stepped down, and for actual implementation at the state level. It's not just, we've come, we've discussed. No, the CSOs, they have a major role to play. They need to take the information down and see how they can, in their own areas, in their own communities, where they have influence as duty bearers, they have to make sure that they're able to roll this down to ensure that they start putting measures in place. You see, you can only do so much, but what you can do, why don't you do it very well? Armed with knowledge, armed with skills, and ensuring that all the stakeholders, including the children and the teachers, they are very critical.
Of course, the children are very critical because all about them, actually.
Yes, so
let's join Alubukar Dogo in Maiduguri. My question to you is, what do you foresee? What are your expectations from this conference in respect of the declining education standard in Borno State, and how the government is trying its possible best to ensure that every child has access to education?
Yeah, actually, good morning, Jimmy. Actually, our government has been doing a lot, and right now we have trained over at least 5,000 teachers, especially in the preparedness response in emergency, education in emergency. And then we have trained them in the conflict resolutions and conflict management. And we have also trained them in DRR, that is disaster risk reductions. That is where the Honorable Minister was talking about how to protect the children when there is a threat or attack. We have trained our pupils, we have trained our teachers in all this regard with the support of UNICEF and other agencies. Actually, we are fully prepared. The only thing is that the thing happens when we don't have the knowledge of this education preparedness response in emergency. But now we are able to train most of our teachers, almost our pupils, and including SBMC. You know, SBMC is key. School-based management committee are the ones that are living in the community, that are living in the society, they are the first people to respond to any kind of situation that happens to our schools, because the school is their immediate environment, and there is need for them to be trained. So during the training, they should not, SBMC should not be left out, because they are very, very key and very, very important. And really, our expectation is that of this conference is that we believe that at the end of the conference, we will come up with a lot of guidelines that will have an inclusive set of education that will provide safety and security to our schools, and also provides mental health to our children to stay and learn in school.
Thank you. That's the point I would like Comfort Umahi to also speak to. What has been our experience in incorporating mental health counseling or therapy to impacted locations and students and parents? We have a number of very well-trained psychologists and psychiatrists around the country, but how much of their services are we tapping?
Okay, we understand that when there's an attack on education, it affects the children psychologically. And so there's this trauma, going back to school and learning in the same environment where they were attacked. In most cases, the schools are not even rebuilt. Schools are closed down, and after some time, they were asked to go back. And nothing is put in place to make the children forget about the attack. And so that causes a lot of trauma. But from our own side as development partners, what we have done is to provide psychosocial support to these children, because we know that learning in such an environment will, in fact, learning will not take place in such an environment. And so we ensure that these children are given psychosocial support. We have trained experts, and in the situation where we don't have, we also do referrals. You know, we work with some health facilities or health providers in the areas where we work to ensure that some of these services are provided. And even in schools, we provide friendly learning spaces where we provide toys, we provide, you know, different learning materials that will make the children play and forget about
who is doing this? Because that's a critical question that I would like you to expatiate on. Namely, look, the psychosocial support you're talking about, who champions it? And then how long does it last? Is it a CSO responsibility? Is it a state government responsibility? I mean, some question was raised the other day about when some of the pupils were free from abduction. One of the most critical things you saw them I'm not trying to diminish the value of that. They were all wearing a ashwabi or some uniform and then given a plate of rice each. After that, what next?
Well, for the psychosocial support being provided goes beyond providing food to the children. And this providing PSS is championed by mostly CSOs. Like Plan International, the organization where I work, in the communities and states where we work, we provide such services to the children, especially in the schools where we are working. We establish child-friendly spaces where children come, they learn through play roles. So some of these services, some of these activities they engage in also help them to overcome trauma. We also mainstream psychosocial support in the teachers training manual we use. So teachers are also trained on how to manage children who are passing through trauma in their classes, because of what the children have experienced, because of the attack they have seen. Sometimes they don't learn like children who have not experienced such attack. And so teachers are also trained on how to manage such children. Right now, maybe these services are provided by the CSOs. I've not seen in any of the government schools where such services are being provided, like the learning child-friendly spaces. But mostly in the Northeast where we work, these services are provided by CSOs. Also talking about support to victims of attack on education. Most times when these attacks happen, children are just left alone and then they come back to school and nothing happens. So the Safe School Declaration, which we are also implementing, is to ensure that these children are also provided with support so that they are able to come back to school. Sometimes even their parents are provided with income-generating activities so that they are also able to support their children to retain, to go back to school and to be able to complete their education. All these services mostly are provided by CSOs. Okay. In terms of psychosocial support services.
Dr. Comfort Mwai, thank you so much. Let me come back to the Honorable Minister. This conference falls at a time it is needed in this country. Can you give us your expectation of the conference and what we expect to get from it? The
Great.
outcome.
Yes, outcomes, objectives are clear. We start with sharing best practices all over the world. Distill from them what needs to be done in this, in reaction to some of our own problems, and then disseminate this into the system and make sure that those who work at each of these institutions, in a nutshell, that is it. Because like Judith had just said, we want to go from just talk to implementation. The commitments have been made. Everyone has now committed to it. The Education Emergency Working Group and all CSOs have actually gotten together and agreed on what needs to be done. We're no longer quarreling over what needs to be done. Now is to the doing, to do it, to go ahead and get it done. And that's what we at the Ministry of Education are working on. And that's why when Kingsley asked about what would be our expectation from the actors, I stopped short of saying, because Nigeria is large, 135,000 primary schools alone, and less than 68,000 of that are owned by state actors. The rest are private individuals, faith-based organizations. There are a lot of players here. I mean, if you look at Kankara in Niger State, where an Islamia school had nearly 100 or something students, and this is not, government didn't have a clue what the man was doing or who he is and how he was going to negotiate and get children. And parents were in it. So Nigeria is this big. In some of the states, like Niger State is so geospatial. It is from one community to another, you probably get about 10 kilometers. So sometimes children to attend school at the nearest school to them will be 3, 4, 5 kilometers away. So the Niger State is actually unique in its the way it is spread out from way out Shiroro. In some areas you can't even access. New Busa, as a local government, who is about the largest local government in Nigeria, an expanse get to. So I sympathize with the Niger State government. I understand what his problems are. However, because we at the Federal Ministry of Education control UBEC. UBEC is a commission set up here which does this interface with 2% of the consolidated revenue fund of the country, which we only spend with the states. All the states, everything that the states do, they set up what they call a SUBEC. And their job is to take this money we've generated at the federal government level and then work at the schools. There's a new response mechanism we are working on the Federal Ministry of Education, so that the governors have agreed with us to working towards something more of like a result for
reward for results.
A reward for results. Let's not just give you money anymore. I think we've gone past that, and if the president approves, we will retool it with the governors, so that we want to know. Let's match you for what it is that you're actually doing. Let's match you for the number of teachers you actually have. Let's match you for the actual number of students who are in school. Let's match you for the actual number of results we're getting. Let's not just keep giving this money. I know the governors may resist this, but you see, it's time to get some sort of work plan in place so that we and the governors are now working in some sort of synergy. So the outcomes we expect would be actually, like they've both said, in implementing now what has been agreed. Whether they are preventive measures, whether they are post-trauma reactions, what kind of, all the things that we've said we want to do. We are now at a conference. The declaration has been made. It's been accepted. Commitments being worked in. This is the 4th conference. There are now a lot of takeaways from it. How do we take this away home? If it has moved from taking away to take home.
So you are now doing the doing.
All right. Thank you very much. And just by the way, Honorable Minister, if you do get to agree with the subnational governments to say use as one of the criteria the number of teachers you have employed, we do hope that the tax basis would indicate that those numbers that are being declared are actually paying taxes to the appropriate state authorities. Otherwise, numbers can just fly around. Let's return to Group Captain Sadiq. Group Captain Sadiq, we want to get your closing thoughts now. And by the way, I mean, we should also, we're discussing our national situation, and we do know what has been happening to our schools. At least the United States, an advanced country, also faces issues with unsafe schools. Known gunmen have stormed schools, and shot and killed pupils and teachers. And trauma, of course, has arisen from those circumstances. Lessons to also learn from that jurisdiction. So, Group Captain Sadiq, going forward out of this conference, what would you like to see?
Going forward, like I said, it's a multi-agency, multi-ministry endeavor: defense, education, foreign affairs, interior. What I would like to see, it's bring out all the different strands in collaboration with UN agencies, with the group on protection of attack against education. There's a very good NGO group that is working on this thing. What I want to see is concerted effort, not individual ministries doing different things. That is the reality. We will not get the desired result. Let all of them come together. Let every ministry designating a lead ministry, and then all the other ministries support. At the state level, involve the state governments, should empower their SUBEB to bring out guidelines that schools must follow. State governments must ensure that security and safety planning is one of the conditions for granting registration or renewing registrations for any school proprietor. School management should ensure, like again, Honorable Minister said, we have plans where you could even do drills for both the staff and the students. If you hear this is what you are going to do. It's going to take a lot of money. It's going to take a lot of training. Guardian schools as a task is something new to our police, is something new to our military. So they need training. That training must be provided to them. Because while you are guarding schools, there are issues again of not traumatizing the children. One of the speakers here has spoken about trauma.
Group Captain.
Again, it's a very dividing line.
Group Captain Sadiq Garba Shehu retired. We've really learned after time. He's a security and defense consultant and expert on Safe Schools Declaration. Thank you so much for coming on Good Morning Nigeria.
It's a pleasure.
The Honorable Minister of State for Education, Dr. Chukwuemeka Nwajiba. Thank you so much for your insights into the topic.
Thank you very much, Mike.
Out to the ladies. Dr. Judith Giwa Amu, she's the officer at UNICEF and National Coordinator Education in Working Groups at UNICEF. Thank you so much for coming on the program.
Thank you.
Dr. Comfort Umahi, she's the program and partnership partner at Plan International. Thank you for coming. And Ali Bukar Dogo, Director of School Services, Borno State Universal Basic Education Board. Thank you so much for coming on Good Morning Nigeria. It's been a pleasure having us. Sports update is next.
The Super Falcons of Nigeria have advanced into the second round of the 2022 Women's Africa Cup of Nations qualifier despite losing